What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 328. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Rob
and John.
I feel like the syllable is just like Ron and John. Like that single syllable just fires.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Oh man, how you guys doing today?
Pretty
All right.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Feeling good
Pretty
today?
good. Yeah, man. Ready to talk some movie schmovie. I
Yeah.
miss you guys, man. Like it's crazy. Like I know that there are people that don't love this as intensely as you two. So sometimes I'll experience something and I'm like, God, fuck, I want to talk to Steve and John about this.
No, I just am so addicted now to being able to do this that like
Yeah.
when I saw a movie we're going to talk about later, the new Scream, I was walking out of it and I was already like irritated that I knew I didn't know anybody who had seen it already, and so I was like, I can't talk about this movie, you know. But so this show has definitely spoiled me.
Well, thankfully we have our little text thread that we can do some conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. I love it.
That's our bridge there, I guess.
But listeners should know we're total nerds about it. We like save it for the show. You can feel us holding back beyond like we make like brief comments, you know, but we don't spill all the beans. So
Yeah. One of us will always catch it and be like, we should save this for the show.
yeah,
When it starts getting too deep, it's like, yeah, we should put a pin in that because this is better for the
Right.
show than this text
Yeah.
thread. But yeah, man, we're gonna go over a couple things like John mentioned. We're gonna kind of Ronald hasn't seen Scream yet, but we're gonna have a special guest on later this episode. Friend of the pod, Lauren, is gonna call in and join us to discuss this new entry in the Scream franchise just came out last weekend. And before we get there, though, we're going to kind of go over a couple, I guess, the more current events, more news items that have popped up since last week. And I think just before Scream, we're going to talk a little bit about the new Peacemaker series on HBO Max, which came out last week or 2 weeks ago, last week.
started last week with three
last
episodes.
week with 3 episodes, right?
Came out with this fourth episode when we're recording this,
Right.
but yesterday, if you're listening to this, and then
sure.
it's going to be weekly from here on out. But we've seen a little bit beyond that, so we've seen a little bit more of the shape of things to come. So we can
Right. So
talk
we'll get
about
to that in a moment. But I guess news-wise, like anything that's popped up here, I know, Ronald, you wanted to mention maybe a trailer that came out in the last week.
Yes. So the Moon Knight trailer for Disney Plus has premiered, starring Oscar Isaac. And I guess before I get deep into it, rest in peace to the gentleman that passed away, who was supposed to portray the villain, one of the villains in Moon Knight, a French actor. Don't get me to try to pronounce his name, but it was recently announced that he died in a ski accident. And I just want to say rest in peace. We're going to see this guy in this one season and probably won't see him in the second. And God, man, what a weird thing to hear right on the heels of right as the trailer came out. This man was,
Is it Gaspard Ulliel? I mean, or
Something like
Ulliel
that.
or Uli or something. Maybe it's Gaspard Uli. Anyway, I don't know. It's spelled like Gaspard Ulliel. But yes, we're terribly sorry for we don't mean any dishonor to the man by mispronouncing his name. But yes, he's an actor who had a couple things lined up when I think another movie that has been shot and another movie that was in pre-production. So at least one more thing from him. But it sounds like he finished all of his work on Moon Knight. So at the very least, maybe between that and the movie, he at least got to complete a couple of big things before his passing. But it was a very freak accident. It was a collision with another skier.
Yeah.
And the other person was injured, but basically all right, was my understanding. And he just happened to hit this other person in such a way that it caused fatal injuries. So,
but yeah, I just want to acknowledge that beforehand. I didn't mean to bring down the room, but
well, no, people might know him from the Hannibal Rising film. He played Hannibal in that movie. That's the one place I knew his name from. But I don't think I even saw that movie all the way through. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Moon Knight trailer to maybe kind of steer out of the downer side of that story. I thought it was I thought this was the first, definitely the glimpse we got before of this show did not have as much style and as much of a cohesive feel to the footage we were seeing. This really felt like a confident thing that they're selling us, whether once again it's going to feel like it's got that familiar Marvel feeling or if it's going to stick to this kind of dark, almost horror movie vibe that the trailer is selling. But I like that aspect of a character who's experiencing fear surrounding whatever's happening to him, you know. And I think Oscar Isaac, we've always known he's really good. It looks like a good character for him to really kind of strut his stuff. So, you know, I'm excited.
Same, man. This looks like an extended theatrical movie. Like this, the production value on this thing looks insane. And I think that's the first thing that I thought about when I saw it. And then also kind of what I was expecting for everything, you know, just for everything to look like this. I'm like, God, this looks like this could come out in the theaters whenever the release date is, March 11th or 12th, or
March 30th.
March 30th. Okay, March 30th. Yeah, it is at the end of the month. But yeah.
But still, that's very soon. I mean, honestly, you're kind of wondering where's that next hit of Marvel going to be coming from now that we know that Doctor Strange is coming out in May. We have to wait all the way till May for a new Marvel movie. But this is like that thing. I did wonder, like, surely they're going to throw something into this gap period in between. And the fact that this has got a little bit of a horror feel, and that movie is supposed to have kind of a horror feel. You know, I think they do try to have these waves of like a vibe or a style as they're going through the way the TV shows interact with the movies. So yeah. I think it's, you know, I like this idea. I've been wanting them for forever to kind of turn up that side of things a little bit, just a little bit of the Creepsville stuff. It's a fun avenue to plumb. Can you plumb an avenue? Is that a mixed metaphor? I'm sorry.
Go with it. I'm not sure, but I'll say yes. Let's just go with yes. I was going to say, like, one of the things that stands out to me, like, and I remember seeing them post about this, the two directors that I guess it's two of the three directors that did the season or the series, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who are like super exciting directors that I basically see anything that they've done. They did like Spring, they did Synchronic, Resolution, The Endless. If you've seen any of those movies, they did an episode on this new Netflix series for Archive 81. But they are very much in that same thing that John was describing, very atmospheric horror. You know, some of it's a little sci-fi to a certain extent. But it just seems like a really awesome pairing for what this show looks like just in the trailer. Beyond, you know, Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke being involved, it just seems like, you know, a nice matching up of the filmmakers that are involved in the show. The other filmmaker I'm not super familiar with, Mohammed Diab, but it looks like they're all three of them are listed on all 6 episodes. I don't know exactly how that breaks out, but Benson and Moorhead are really exciting filmmakers who have some really cool stuff coming up. But to see them involved with the MCU in this series, it does make it feel. At least I feel like the impression I got is that this does look a little more cinematic, a little bigger. You know, and what you get to see of Moon Knight and Oscar Isaac's, you know, transformation into that character is exciting. And I mean, I love Oscar Isaac, love Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, we should mention that he seems to be playing a character named Arthur Harrow. I guess it's Harrow, but it's I forget what his super villain name was. But yes, it's a character that we now know a little bit more about what to expect from that character. But as with all these movies and shows, they take something from the comics and they kind of mutate it a little bit into something that works cinematically. So there's no telling what the story is really going to be. But as far as sort of a first level kind of villain to have a new hero fighting, this feels about right. But Ethan Hawke is also the kind of actor that it seems like you'd want to keep around. So I don't know, you know, with this being a television show, you never know. Are they setting up like a multi-season storyline, or are they gonna be kind of one and done? Is that how you attract someone like Ethan Hawke, is by telling them you'll be off the hook in six episodes, you know? So who knows?
We'll see. I mean, yeah, I don't know, but it looks great, man. I mean, I like, you know, there seems to be a lot of steam behind it. So I mean, it seems like a pretty exciting property for Marvel, something different again. And yeah, I can't wait to see it, man. It looks great.
Yeah.
Hot second here. While we're on Marvel and thinking of things different from Marvel, we had a little bit of on our text chat about how Ronald and I finally saw Eternals.
Yes.
You know, so I figured we could briefly rehash that. I know, John, you had seen it when it was in theaters still, and you kind of went over, you know, how you felt about it. But Ronald, what did you think of the Eternals?
It was a disaster to me.
Really?
It was a
Really?
fucking disaster. Yeah, I had a hard time getting through it. This is the thing, man. Like, I think sometimes people's emotional attachment to this stuff and your opinion on something as a story sometimes have to be separate, right? Like, um, there's only so much of the fanfare that you have for something that can affect, like, if it's not good, it's not good to you. And I've been met in this weird space where, like, I'll express, like, I'm a huge fan of the MCU, but there are things that have come out in the past couple of years that are just not for me. And when you express it, it seems to be attached with people's feelings about this stuff collectively. Like, I'm not saying that the moment you had with Avengers, Steve, is any knock on how shitty I thought this movie was. Like, it's just, I didn't like it. I from start to finish, it was one of the hardest things I've ever digested in motion. And it sounded good. It looked good, but it also was very generic to me. And it could have, another director could have taken. I love some of the ideas about feminism and the role that some of the characters had, and some of the like plot points that get subverted. You're like, oh, it feels like another movie would have did this, but this movie's doing that. That still didn't win me over.
Yeah.
And I'm still not convinced.
Well, I do think it's interesting that, like, it was a wild thing that, like, we've talked all along about what's going to be the movie that's going to break the kind of Marvel spell.
Yeah.
And, like, here was the movie, and also, they should do more different things, and they should work more with filmmakers and let them do their thing. And
right,
here was a movie that was a different thing, and it's Chloe Zhao, who was, in the midst of making this movie, became an Oscar-winning director. And, like, it's just wild to me that the movie that broke the Marvel spell was the movie where they did all the stuff that on paper people have been wanting them to do, but I do think, and I wouldn't even say that it's like, I don't know. I think that where you fall with this movie is going to fall, and I said something similar when I talked about it before, that to me it was better than the hype of worst Marvel movie ever. To me, it was way better than that. But I do like the ideas in it, and I actually thought the kind of generic execution of it was one of the things that kind of made it feel like a C+ movie to me, rather than the usual range that Marvel movies are in. But I think that where you fall with this movie is going to kind of land on, like, how much are you going to, like, how much are the ideas and the kind of subtle feel that this is a little bit different, how much is that going to appeal to you? Yes. Versus how much are you in the Marvel thing for these to actually be great movies? And I think sometimes when you're like I sometimes watch a horror franchise, or I'll watch any, like, if I'm part 10 of any franchise, I'm in it for the franchise, so I'm kind of looking for the little things to pick up and enjoy from this thing. I don't have to sit down and obsess about the Eternals, you know what I mean? Like, Marvel's even got something, they had Spider-Man coming right up behind it. So it's like, it's a funny thing to me that this was the movie that kind of broke the spell. But I also think that the reason it broke the spell is because, I think you said it in our text thread, Ronald, you just didn't think it was executed well. I don't think it was so much executed badly as I think it was executed in a way that was not, like, it felt like a risky property. And then when you go to see it, you realize they didn't figure that out. You know what I mean? That it was just as risky as it seemed from a mile away. Yeah. That it was a lot to sell to an audience. There's a lot of dialogue that's, like, selling this world and the scope of this thing. And you might find it really interesting, but it's certainly not the kind of Marvel movie where you feel that. I mean, I was in a reasonably crowded theater when I saw it, and I didn't feel that swell that I felt when I saw Shang-Chi, which was, around the same time in terms of theaters, how many people were in the room. So anyway, I don't know. I think even enjoying it and appreciating things about it, I felt that lack of, like, of execution or something that usually when you're watching one of these great Marvel movies, you feel that momentum of, oh yeah, this movie is really firing on all cylinders. I don't think this movie ever felt like it arrived at that short of a tone.
I don't think, like, kind of like what you were getting at before in terms of, like, what people want Marvel to do with the movies in the MCU. I think that probably the biggest failure is that I feel like it tried to do all those things in a movie. Right. And I think that really did kind of, cut it off at the start, that it really, I don't think, had any chance of, like, getting into a sweet spot where, like, these things are really firing properly in terms of the story, in terms of this massive cast that you're introduced to, and like you kind of get these little morsels of backstory. I just think that you don't have enough opportunity to really truly latch onto anything in the movie, and I think that is the biggest disservice. And I think in general, I kind of probably line more up with Ronald. Like I definitely, I kind of kicked off the conversation on our text thread. Like I was really having trouble getting through it in some ways, because I think that was what was happening, was like I was trying to latch on to the characters in the film, and then the characters like would go away for a long time, or or the focus of the story would move from one to the other when you think you're supposed to be following one character. And I think it just suffers from this like too much.
And certain actors fare better than others in this movie too, as far as like who sells it. And it's not necessarily the people that you would think. Like there's some people that you recognize to be pretty good actors who feel a little flat in this.
Another interesting thing too is, so the reason why this is especially interesting is just the year that this came out, we had a story that was told from a Bible thick level text that was simplified in a way that was first and foremost, let's get this very clear. Eternal's story is not as complicated as Dune on any level. It doesn't have as many moving parts. And yet I watched a thing that was drawn from this text that I understood most of the time. I understood most of Dune. Right. They pointed out connections to things that were kind of further away. They explain this will not be kind of a thing that we talk about now, but all those people over there, we'll get to them at some point. It handled all that stuff well, and that's what frustrated me a little more, because I just watched something that was more complicated explained to me simpler.
But also Dune gave itself the task of telling half the story of that, as opposed to what the Eternals did, which is like try to cram all of this. Like literally, when you're talking about cutting to more characters, they literally have to introduce like 11 characters in this
fast.
Thing. Yeah, try to give them their moment, but you never feel that like that. I don't know. You don't feel the cohesion of like a team or a family. You kind of understand from the way they talk to each other that there's like a relationship there, but you don't feel like that warmth or character that you normally get. And I can say, well, maybe you can. Some of that is on the fact that these characters are a little bit outside of the human experience, so they might be a little quirky and a little alien. But that still doesn't answer that question of what you're talking about, Steve. Why is there so little for you to grab onto and follow? Like there isn't that point of view character, or I don't know. Not that you necessarily always need a person that's the total point of view character, but usually Marvel delivers that. Like finds a way to hook the audience in. And this time, they had a lot of free floating moments that weren't really connected by like a human story. It's almost like an experiment that failed in a lot of ways in that respect.
I think so. I mean, I don't think it's a complete failure. There are some things in it that I thought were interesting, and a couple parts of the film that I thought worked pretty well. But it's way too bloated, and especially for how like kind of big the idea is, to marry that to the idea of like having a massive cast of people that you're supposed to know and know who does what and why and all this. Like, it just didn't work for me. I don't think. I mean, I don't know that it's my least favorite MCU film. Maybe it is. I don't know. I have to think about that. But it's it doesn't benefit from coming between Shang-Chi and Spider-Man. So that's for sure. No, but I don't know. But I was gonna say arguably,
but it's interesting that Marvel can have an also ran.
Yeah, and I don't think that the comparison to Dune is not accurate. Like, because I don't think that the Eternals ends on like a there's no intent to continue telling this story here. That we just don't know the other side of the story. Obviously, the movie ends on a pretty big, not cliffhanger, but that definitely sets it up for way more of this story to tell. Yeah. But I do think that not being familiar with Dune at all, even if it is half of the story, the half that was told, I'm right to the point where I want to know more about the story, where I'm not going back.
I'm not like saying they're unambitious. I'm saying Dune is a more like properly paced movie if you're going to introduce that kind of big mythology. They don't try to cram so much in.
Yeah, definitely.
They don't try to show you everything. I almost feel like that urge to try to show you everything in the Eternals might be based on like an insecurity about the, like they were feeling that, you know how Marvel retools and reshoots and re-edits. I bet that they tried to put as much like eye-popping stuff as possible into this thing because they were trying to make sure that it had all these big ideas. But also, it is interesting. The Chloe Zhao part of it is something that's just like, maybe these, it's a little bit like Ava DuVernay with Wrinkle in Time. These directors that we love, they get a chance to take on some of these big kind of fantasy films.
Yeah,
they don't always have the right style to match their ideas with this kind of genre stuff. Sometimes they overcome it, and sometimes they get kind of stuck in the mud of trying to make like in both cases it's a Disney film, right? So anyway, true. I don't know how auteurist they let anybody be.
So the 3D models, the enemies that they had, it's like they went to like a Reddit thread and they were just like, hey, what are 3D rendered aliens look like? And can we borrow these? And let's just make a couple color variations of these looking monsters. And then it's like they got Unreal Engine and they got the default aliens in the engine.
Right.
Yeah, it just, everything looks so damn. I should not look at something and be like, oh, that's what I imagine that looking like. And I've never heard of this property before. I've never seen it before. It shouldn't be that generic to me. I want to look at something and be like, holy shit, I've never seen anything that looks like that before. Yeah. And I feel like they have the resources to do that.
Well, let's segue into Peacemaker, I should say, because I think that that's something that sometimes if you're going to say who can do the sort of let someone have a style, let a thing have its own vibe, let a thing have a look and a feel to it. I mean, as much as we might love the Marvel stuff, that house style really does kind of smother things. And then you see something like Peacemaker, and it's got that James Gunn feel, and he brings that texture to it. Even the action has a little bit more punch to it than the Marvel shows in general. And I was just thinking, like, what is this difference here? Why is it that when DC, Warner Brothers, whatever it is, when they let someone kind of go wild with the property, they seem to actually let them go wild with it, versus the Marvel thing where it feels like, for better or for worse, everything is tooled so finely? Because I think that, like, talking about how the action and the effects and stuff look sort of unoriginal to you in the Eternals. That stuff should have been amazing to look at. It should have been like this crazy sci-fi experience to see this stuff.
I agree.
So I don't know how, like, how are you feeling about Peacemaker as a show, but also just what do you think that difference is in terms of, like, maybe DCEU is not as cohesive, but maybe the one thing they do is let people make a movie that kind of has its own feel.
Yeah, I think it's like a double-edged sword. Like their movies feel, yeah, exactly. Their movies feel like less cohesive or more or way less than Marvel's in terms of the aesthetic or just like, the quote unquote brand. And there's WB movies that are like, not even in the DCEU, but are the DC characters even right now,
Yeah.
So it does feel like that, these filmmakers that they get to make these movies, whether it's, Patty Jenkins or Zack Snyder or James Wan or David Sandberg, or James Gunn, their movies feel like their movies, where I feel like in the MCU, that's more of an exception. Like, you have some like Guardians or like, Ragnarok that really do feel like the filmmaker making them. Like it feels like the brand of that filmmaker, where I feel like in the DC films, all the ones I just mentioned, I think all those movies kind of have a vibe that definitely still align with each of those respective filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And even like listening to interviews like James Gunn recently in promoting Peacemaker, he's like, the most exceptional person to talk to about that, mainly because he's kind of got a foot in both areas right now. And, he compares them pretty similarly, but, the DC part of it, he does kind of note, and I forget what podcast it was on, like Top 5 or something, but he was talking about that specifically, that even when you go back to the comics, the DC comics always felt more like they could be segmented off and have separate stories going, and weren't as completely tied together as the Marvel comics were, which I don't have that insight, but he was describing it that way. But him being an example, you know, and watching Peacemaker, you know, just after Suicide Squad came out, you know, that film and this series is like, especially the series is like 110% a James Gunn thing. You know, like it just reeks of his style and his music choices and the way he shoots action and the way, you know, he did most of the episodes for the season.
He wrote them all and directed,
right.
yeah, most of them.
Like 6, I think, or 5 of them. But man, yeah, I mean, in general, I am like straight up loving the series so far, and I haven't watched all the episodes that we've been given access to, but even up to the point of what's aired so far, if you're kind of getting up to episode 4 of this season, I am like 100% in on the characters around him, the story that they have set up for him in this television series. And you know, most importantly, the opening title sequence of the show is pretty exceptional.
I mean, every time I see the opening title sequence, I catch something different in it, you know, so I watch for someone's reaction, and I particularly love Harcourt and Myrn, is that his name? When they come out dancing. That it's the herky jerky style of the dance is just so funny to me. It seems to really be based on like what kind of dance could a guy like John Cena do, but then it's like everybody doing it, and you can see that some people are still able to bring a little bit more to it. And then there's like my favorite shot in the whole opening sequence might be the shot of the cops, because they get a nice little moment to do this cool little three of them kind of strutting together. But it's just so fun, and it's like it gives. James Gunn said something about how he loves his actors and he loves his characters, and he wanted to give even the background or minor characters moments that felt special for the actor and for the audience to remember them by. And I just see that all over the show, but particularly how in that dance sequence, you know, it takes you a few episodes before everybody that comes out dancing feels like they have a place in your mind, and you know why they might be in the opening sequence. But you also see how this is a show that changes its status quo already in the episodes we've seen. So, you know, someone might be in the opening credits after they are dead on the show. I mean, it's an interesting thing to do an opening sequence like that, but I love that he said his motivation was he didn't want anyone to ever hit skip intro going into his show. So I don't know. I just think it's a very James Gunn way to get you into this thing, because it almost seems like it should be too goofy and it should break the feel, but it really more sets you up for that everybody on this show is on the same page and seems to be, you know, digging this kind of tricky vibe. Maybe it's like James Gunn's humor is a little bit broy, and it's a little bit nerdy, and it's a little bit like subversive, and he still has a little bit of that trauma stuff going on, and he's definitely going for shock value. But he clearly really values performers who are willing to show vulnerability, and the way that he seems to be discovering everything he can get John Cena to do and everything that John Cena can do really feels like I can understand why he started sparking on the idea of this show, because John Cena seems game for anything James Gunn wants, and he seems, I don't know, my estimation of his actual, you know, talents as an actor have grown watching some of the tonal shifting he has to do to make this show work. Plus, I love Vigilante. How are you feeling, Ronald? What's your Peacemaker take?
So I've been watching a lot of James Gunn interviews, and James Gunn has been saying something that's been drilled into my head. One of them is that Alan Moore was originally he wanted Watchmen to be, instead of comedian, he wanted that role to be Peacemaker, and he couldn't because of some conflicts. So he created these characters around that. You know, Watchmen's one of my favorite comics ever written. It's perfect to some people, but it gives you an idea of what kind of person Peacemaker is, right? Or was, let's say was. And seeing this evolution of a man who it's really just a tale about family and relationships, and, you know, what your parents make you into sometimes, you know, unknowingly, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, and the dynamic you have with a parent. I mean, specifically a father, and the way that this is tackled is done in such a cool way that this doesn't even feel like a comic book show sometimes, and it feels like more of a dissection of what trauma can do to you, what relationships can do to you, and how they affect your perception of yourself. And when you're around people who don't have that investment in you, that version of you that was a kid, how you can blossom. in whatever direction. That's beautiful. That's a fucking comic book show we're talking about, right? And the fact that it has that scope of emotion is a testament to how good it is. I don't want to throw the M word around yet. I'm gonna have to see the season finale, but it's feeling like a masterpiece. It's feeling like I'll say a master stroke.
I was just about to say it's a master stroke. I don't know that James Gunn's. I think Guardians of the Galaxy might still be and forever be.
Oh yeah, it's up there.
The first one, I mean, it's this. It is so much, and it's set up so much. But I feel like once he did that, he's been able to play at this level where if you like James Gunn and you know what he's doing, he's generally going to do a pretty good job of delivering those jokes. The heart you're talking about, the real sort of, he really seems to want to address problematic people and what it means to like overcome your worst side. And, Rocket Raccoon is a step towards Peacemaker. You know what I mean? Yeah. We've got all these characters he's done before that are like a step towards this ultimately like regretful, kind of broken, angry guy who and I love the way that the characters around him, have different ways of reacting to his essential kind of humanity. But as the show rolls along, especially I think in the next couple episodes that air, there's really like, you feel that family bond, and it's very similar to the way it felt in Guardians of the Galaxy when everybody sort of says, let's die together, and it's this moment of family. Like there's a moment in a car ride where they're listening to a song and everybody's getting into it. That then later a character sends a picture from that moment out to everybody, and you see everybody reacting to that on their phones and having like a little smile. And it's like, when do you see that in a comic book show? Right. I mean, I don't know. I think all these things, we're basically saying the James Gunn element it runs strong in this. And I believe, Steve, you said it very well. You said he has a very clear vision when he makes stuff for characters and for story. And, it doesn't feel too much like it's on rails. You do feel the shape of this story. Like once it gets to episode 4 or 5, I did go, I kind of see what a season of this is going to be. It's not going to be this breakneck show. The first couple episodes are really crazy and wild. Then it kind of settles into a more show-like pace that we're familiar with from serialized television shows. But yeah, it still thematically is really strong. And if you like James Gunn, I don't know. I feel like we said this about Suicide Squad. This is even more heart than that. But I like how it even tries to, like, it even pays homage to that moment, like when that movie ended and I heard this show was coming out and I said, I don't know that I want to see this character that much more. This show seems to, like, it's coming out of the gate trying to answer why you should want to see more of this character. Right. And showing him regret the kind of asshole he was in the movie is a key part of what made me go, okay, I can invest in this guy because I didn't like what he did. For
sure. And if you go ahead. Sorry. We say, John?
No, that was it.
And if you had any doubt that this was connected to Suicide Squad, there are very specific things that are shown that make it very clear that it is connected to the world through some. I'm not going to spoil anything. Some relationships between people, which I think is such a cool thing to do. To say this is not on an island. This is very much connected to the world that you just saw in the movies. And you know what? I think this is a bigger thing than Guardians because DC doesn't have the goodwill that Marvel has. And people, even within the DC community, even super fans are very finicky about their properties. I've heard people slander Shazam and many other films that have come out. And the lack of consistency really does kind of leave DC fans on the fence about anything that comes out, any property that comes out. It had so much more to win over. It's so much more scrappy in that way because it doesn't have a built-in audience. I have a lot of friends. I've talked to like 10 people that have reached out to me that don't watch DC, that aren't connected to it. That's like, man, I watched that John Cena show, not knowing that it's connected to Suicide Squad or anything, which is really cool, man. And I think that is the genius of this one. That is so much more to prove because it doesn't have the established audience that Marvel does. But
Well, see, but I want to challenge that a little bit
okay,
because Guardians didn't have a built-in audience. Everyone talked about what a gamble it was. It looked stupid that there was a talking raccoon and a tree in it. So I still think this is just something James Gunn does well. Is like
Yeah.
pick oddball characters to
He's-
like in retrospect that seems like such an obvious winner, but at the time people were saying like
No way. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
this movie's going to be this movie's who are these characters? I think what you're saying that's really interesting though is adapting that to television. This is something where James Gunn is entering this world of television with a lot of swagger that you don't normally. I don't know. Like there's a confidence to this show that just like I instantly thought it was a more fully formed thing than any of the Marvel shows, like aesthetically and just how it landed with me. It just felt more. I mean, it reminded me of Ash versus Evil Dead, actually, just because of how much it just delves into the world of a character. And, like, the world of this show is the mind of this character, you know? So you're going into Peacemaker's world. You're spending a lot of time with him sitting around dancing in his underwear to heavy metal records.
Yeah.
And it's similar to the way in Ash versus Evil Dead, you spend a lot of time with just what a lowlife Ash, the character, was, you know? So I don't know. I think that this is a cool way to sort of spin on the anti-hero prestige television show. But James Gunn is like saying, all right, he compared it to Better Call Saul in some interview that I
saw
read,
that too.
where I was like, okay, just the fact that he would even have that reference point means he's on the kind of interesting journey you're talking about, Ronald, where it's a very soulful story. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a flashy story for its own sake at all.
It seems like he's like actively doing what you just said, like in the sense that, like, you know, if he's given an option, he's always picking, you know, the underdog or like the lesser known property or the one where the expectations are like against it from the jump, you know, because I think that's really where he enters the conversation and says, okay, well, let me show you really well developed characters and a really strong story and show you how that can make you care about something that you laughed at to begin with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's like, you know, the thing about Guardians, the thing about why would we have a Peacemaker show? And then you get 3 or 4 episodes in and you're like, I didn't know I wanted this show. Like, it's like, I would have never thought that, this would be the one that I'd say spin off, but everybody's game. The cast is great. And, I mean, among maybe 1 or 2 other shows right now that I'm watching, it's probably my favorite thing that I've watched recently, like on TV at least. And just because mainly we've had the opportunity to see a few extra episodes. But yeah, I know it's airing on HBO Max now. Like we said, there's 4 episodes out at the time of this podcast, and there's going to be 8 episodes total. So, you know, it's another month or so of the show. And maybe there'll be more seasons of Peacemaker. We'll see.
I hope so. I mean, James Gunn just announced that he has another DC TV project coming like a week ago. What the hell is that? I'm glad that he's in, though. I'm glad that he's
me
in.
too.
Just keep him busy.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think we have somebody to bring in.
Yeah.
Don't we?
I think we do. And you could probably see more than Ron and I can. Is there somebody there?
Yes, there's
Somebody
somebody
waiting to join.
I'm going to click admit. They've been patient, I suppose, but I didn't know if maybe there was some texting going on behind the scenes, letting them know that we were finishing up a segment. But I can just click admit.
I'm sure they're just busy watching TikToks, waiting for their turn.
All right.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to click admit then, and we'll see what happens. Brian is connecting to audio.
Yeah, this would be our special guest, Lauren, but labeled on the screen as Brian.
Well, you know, Brian is a nickname for Lauren.
Yeah, we call her Brian all the time.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey, Brian.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
I miss you.
Yes, it's been too long.
It's been too long.
Yeah, like 2 years too long.
It's been 2 years?
Since
Yeah.
COVID, I mean,
COVID, yeah.
Jeez.
we haven't gone
Jeez.
anywhere.
Jeez.
It's ruining my life.
Welcome back, Lauren.
Thanks.
There's always a moment in movie in the movie life world or whatever we call this, where it's like this is a moment where we have to ask Lauren to come back on. And it's usually
Yes.
maybe like anything really horror heavy, maybe a Stephen King thing, but always a Scream thing. So
Yes.
you know,
It's
last
possible
week
I invited myself.
What's
Well,
that?
you know,
we've had conversations prior, but yes, she did.
Yeah.
She did try to invite herself immediately when we saw the movie. But that we had you already set up almost. But yeah, so Scream, the new entry, the 5th movie in the franchise, but just called Scream. 2022 or however you want to call it, the requel attempt that is so popular now with so many franchises where they're just using, or a lot of them are using the same name as the original property. It's either a direct sequel like the Halloween requel was with David Gordon Green, but who this coming fall will be into their third film in their own trilogy of Halloween films. So I don't know what's to come of the Scream franchise that we're going to talk about now. And this new iteration, maybe a new trilogy, I don't know. But last Friday, the new film, Scream, came out. We've got some new characters, new cast, some legacy characters, legacy cast members. And this one is kind of put out by the guys in Radio Silence. So Chad and Matt, Tyler and Matt directed it. And then Chad's one of the producers. But these are the guys that did Ready or Not. They've done a couple of the sequences in some of the VHS films. Most people probably know them from that or Ready or Not, but somehow they got involved with the Scream franchise, and I'm, from the announcement, I was really excited for it. But there's a lot to talk about now. I don't know how we want to handle this in terms of spoilers, and Ronald hasn't seen it yet, so Ronald's going to put on some earmuffs here in a moment. But how do you got, John? What do you think we should do? Should we do any spoilers, or should we?
I think there's
to the end, or what?
I was going to throw it to Lauren, especially because I feel like there's ways to talk around the ultimate spoilers, but since this is sort of the back end of the show, why not sort of do light to no spoilers at first, and then Ronald can go into earmuffs mode, and then we can talk about anything that we just want to hash out that because it's a spoiler. There's definite spoilers to this movie that I just feel like I don't want to have half the conversation, and then we can signal Ronald back in, and listeners will just know that there's a spoiler section starting.
But do we want to come up with a cool hand signal or something that the three of us will do in synchronization to get Ronald back onto the podcast?
Well, we could all do a scream face. To let Ronald know. Face? I don't know. Isn't that the Edvard Munch's The Scream? But also we could all wipe the knife at the same time. I don't know. I'm trying to think of we could do that. Ron, any preference, man? We're just kind of catering this to you right now.
I like the Scream faces. I don't even want to see.
That means John's gonna grab a screen
because I feel like you're gonna use gestures when you're talking about it. You're like at the part where, and then.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for you. Maybe you should put some blinders on too.
I'm gonna disappear and then just message me when you're ready. I'm gonna disappear for a bit.
Well, I'll start the non-spoiler stuff, so you can hear some comments about this movie, right, okay. Ronald? But not we won't get into plot stuff. Okay. Now, I listened to the last episode Lauren was on today, because that was the episode where we did all the Scream movies. I think that was the last time you were on. Was that not? We did all 4 in one episode, and at the end of that one, we all totally agreed, without even thinking about it, that our ranking was 1, 2, 4, 3 in terms of the quality of the Scream films. I just want to ask Steve and Lauren, where do you put Scream 5, Scream 2022 in that ranking?
Probably right after 2.
Oh, wow.
I think.
Yeah, probably the same for me. I mean, one of the things I want to bring up is the more I kind of separate myself from the movie, having seen it, a few days ago now, my expectations for it have kind of I've been able to separate the two things, what I was thinking they would do versus what the movie was that I saw. So then the more I'm able to do that, I feel like the more and more I really enjoyed the film, and it kind of rises higher. I don't know that it would replace Scream 2 in my rankings, but it's possible that it could, if I watched it, a couple more times. But it's definitely probably, in the top 3 of the 5 for me as well. What about you, John?
I would put it at the end. I would put it last. But I think this is maybe the most quality controlled horror franchise that there is. I don't think it's in any incredible dishonor to say that this is my least favorite.
Right.
Dishonor, that's my buzzword for this episode. I think I used it earlier. That's a very strong word. But I don't think it's a bad thing to be the worst Scream movie. You know what I mean? Or my least favorite Scream movie. But there's just different things about this movie left me cold in a way that none of the others did. And I don't think it was so much expectations getting the best of me, Steve, but I did have sort of I think that it wasn't like, my expectation of what they would do with certain characters wasn't met. It was more like I got to the end, and it was after a couple days I started realizing how wasted I thought some of the characters were and some of the returns were. And I definitely think of the returning characters, there's definitely one who has much more to do than the others.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
And it really had this feeling that of like, just, let's cut to the classic characters and then cut back to the movie. Let's just cut to the classic characters off doing their thing and then back to the movie. And I don't know. I mean, there were so many different of the requels. Like in the episode we did before about the Scream movies, we were talking about what they would do in this movie. And we said they'll nod to elevated horror. We talked about how it was a requel, that they might do requels. They might do this new legacy thing. We nailed exactly what they were going to do with our little prediction. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but it did have me thinking about how, knowing that there's like a pattern for these things, it makes you think of other things. Like Dewey is definitely doing like a Han Solo in Force Awakens kind of riff of being like, you catch up to this character and he's had bad luck since the last time that we saw him. And I think just inherently he has therefore a more interesting character to play than Courtney Cox and
Neve
I'm
Campbell.
going to disappear. I'm hearing too much.
But that's about it. I'll just say that. I'll just wrap it up by saying that would be my issue. Would be that I don't know that bringing back these characters and mixing with these new kind of bland characters. I think that was the thing where the movie kind of left me cold. Like, looking back, there's only one thing the movie did that I absolutely hated, and the rest of it was stuff that just, I don't know. It's almost like I could have predicted. If you'd asked me who's the killer, I would have guessed exactly how it went. So that's it, Ronald.
Okay. Well,
anybody want to say anything else? Spoiler light, or are you just out of here, Ronald?
I'm out of here. I don't want to hear anymore. I'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thing was like, in the moment, or some of the things that I'm sure you're thinking, John, I definitely agree with. And I think that, my connection to this franchise is like, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, the first one. And I think that, those characters that we get to spend more time with in this movie, specifically Dewey, I feel like, because, he has the most to do in this movie, like you're basically saying. And I think that, like, that kind of connection to those such well-rounded and like well-developed characters is, and, in him and Gail's relationship, I think when you kind of put that up against the new characters that you're introduced to in the movie, that kind of does stand out to me as like, I don't know that any of these characters, the new characters, really truly are all that exciting to me. Like, I don't think that, and I, ironically, I think if I was going to say that any of them would be my biggest criticism, I think I enjoyed the lead the least, the girl from In the Heights. And I mean, she's fine, but I mean, I feel like some of the characters around her, like Jenna Ortega playing her sister, and like the twins, I thought were more interesting, just in terms of their performance. Now the lead character, Sam, like, she's kind of like holding some stuff back that you kind of learn through the movie, and there's a bit of a change towards the third act of the movie for her. But I just think that that's a comparison I can kind of probably align with, is that I don't think that any of these new cast members really like hold a flame at all to any of the cast really in most of the other movies, to be honest. Like, I just think that they they kind of serve their purpose. But I mean, for the story, if this story continues and they do sequels of any kind, if they, I know there's a plan for another trilogy, for another film maybe, but I just I would still be more excited to see our legacy characters, which I guess is maybe a slight failure for this requel, in terms of like making me love and want to see more of the newest cast. But I don't know. What about you, Lauren? I mean, what's, I don't know, not to get too heavy into spoilers quite yet, but I mean, what general takeaways, feelings, what's where are you at?
I don't think I have a huge issue with most of the casting for the new people.
Yeah.
I think if I was going to complain the most, what was the girl's name? I don't want to say who she was, but like long dark hair. What is it, Olivia or something like that? Liv? I can't remember now.
Amber.
Amber?
What? Sam, Tara, Amber.
Anyway.
Sam, Tara's sisters. Amber is Tara's friend. I'm not sure. They all have dark hair, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, there's the one who's the girlfriend. I would call her the girlfriend character. Is that who you're talking about?
Her best friend, the little girl's
Tara's
best
friend?
See, now this is the problem.
Tara's
These
friend
characters,
is Amber.
but there's almost no evidence in the movie that these people are friends. You know what I mean? There's only one scene at the beginning where we see her worry about her, and there's like, oh, she's friends with her, but I know that by name more than I do by action. And I think that is like where this movie misses that the other movies nailed, was like that introducing this group of characters within a few minutes. You got them in the first movie and in this, even in the second movie. I don't know. Go ahead though.
I feel like she was. I feel like she was the least interesting to me. Like, obviously she was very clingy to the one girl, but other than that, I feel like she was barely in the movie. But the rest of the cast was fine. I definitely I feel like Steve. I like the twins the best of the new people. But I feel like I went into it kind of knowing how I felt when I went and saw the fourth one, and knew that like nobody's gonna like do it for me like the old people do.
Sure.
Right.
But I was willing to accept these new people into my life, basically. But I do agree, like comparing them even to the people in the fourth film, like I probably do think that cast was a little bit like fresher maybe, but I don't have like any inherent problems with anybody other than that one girl.
Well, I mean, I think that's why I used the word bland and not bad. You know, these just felt kind of like...
That's right, yeah.
Like when I was thinking about these movies again and listening to us talk about it, the original movies, like none of us loved 3, but we all agreed Parker Posey is fucking awesome in that movie, and like steals the scene of, you know, time and time again. And it's like there's nobody in this movie who quite does that. And then we talked. Ronald, you know, didn't like it. You know, we had varying opinions, but then we talked forever about Matthew Lillard's performance in the first movie, or Timothy Olyphant in the second movie, or even Randy Meeks. I just feel like this movie didn't give me anything new on that level that felt like, oh yeah, this is, and for a and I think that's especially bad for a movie that like throughout the movie is patting itself on the back for doing something different, or saying we're going back to the original. Like throughout the whole movie, they're like saying you got to do a spin on it, and you've got to be fresh and original, and you've got to show people that you know what made the original great, but do something new. And it's like, I don't know if they think they're doing that just because they have a character that's saying that. You know, it felt to me like they were congratulating themselves throughout the movie, and I was like, I never quite saw that fresh spin. I guess maybe there's this meta comment that kind of rehashing is the new remake or the new reboot or whatever.
Right, exactly.
But they kind of made that point in the last one. 4 was already talking about remakes and what do you do when you're coming back to do something again, you know? Right. In fact, I think even the word requel may have been in that movie. Anyway, I just think that like this movie, I guess that's the one thing, if I can say expectations got in my way. My expectation that they were going to do, like in every interview, these people have this great take on this, and so my mind was spinning out as to like what genius take they had, and that just didn't feel to me like it warranted talk of a genius take. But I did think that like in the very beginning when she was on the phone and she was talking about elevated horror, I thought, are they going to at least play around with this idea of like maybe what are the rules of that? Or I don't know, like it would have been fun to see them at least try something, you know, that was brand new. I also found that the kind of comment on toxic fan culture felt kind of wedged in and heavy handed, even though I liked that they were trying to make that point that, you know, that was a motivating factor for some of the characters. But like, I felt like that was another thing that kind of just didn't land for me, that felt like an idea they were trying to explore, because that's one thing the Scream movies have always tried to do, is have an idea, you know, a genre idea or some kind of commentary to make. But yeah, it just didn't feel fresh to me.
I feel like that particular thing was a little too much. Like we talked about the fourth one, like the motive being with, you know, wanting that Insta fame and like that social media, like rise of fame, you know. I feel like it's not the same thing, but it's kind of this, you know what I mean? Like it's got that same vibe to it. So I get that.
Yeah, I think like, I mean, I don't know. I kind of liked like the ways in which it was trying to comment on how the horror genre has changed or is changing still. And I mean, the toxic fandom is like kind of obviously a part of that and every other genre of franchise blockbuster stuff, you know, like when we left the movie theater, I was like immediately talking to Lauren about like the Snyder cut and just like, you know, what all that felt like. and that kind of motivation, and how far people would take that, obviously. But I don't know, like
Right.
some of the comments, and especially with the character that is like, I don't even remember her name, the girl, one of the twins, who was kind of like the expert at all this, like she's like Randy's niece. That it's like the ways in which the horror community has changed around the Stab franchise. Like I think the idea of the Scream franchise has now become a franchise that is commenting on horror film, but specifically about a horror film franchise in that world that is based on the events that we're watching in Scream,
Right.
And I mean, I kind of like that, to be honest. Like, I like the fact that, in the marketing for this, like, people are like, what the hell is Ghostface doing with like a flamethrower and like a metal mask? And then you find out, oh, well, this is a part of the motivation of this story, is that like the Stab franchise has spun off in a manner much like somebody would say like the Saw franchise has, or some of these more modern franchises that have just become entry 7, 8, 9, and it really has nothing to do anymore with,
or even Jason going
franchise.
to space, or Freddy goes to hell, or whatever.
That's what
Jason goes to hell too. Jason goes everywhere. But it's like,
but those are titles that would have come out around the time Scream's commenting on these things. Like I'm talking about, the gap between 25 years, and not that they didn't do it in 2, 3, and 4 also, but I think the time between 4 and 5, the fact that 11, how many years later?
11.
Like 11 years later, that some things have stayed the same, but some things have changed in the horror community. So like talking about the franchise that we're saying now, Freddy goes to hell, or whatever it was. Jason goes to space, Jason goes to hell. Freddy, I don't know. It's a little different.
Yeah.
It's just like that stuff there's consistency there, because that would be the comparison to like Stab 8 or whatever it is in the film. But then you also have these conversations about, our opening scene, like with the whole quote unquote elevated horror, and like the like very like obvious attempt to separate those films from the real horror community, or the horror, horror in general. Like the fact that elevated horror has kind of become another, like a genre itself in some ways, and that people like separate the conversations. So I don't know. They're to that point, I think that there is some interesting stuff in the movie that they're talking about personally, but I do think it kind of...
See, I think they kind of dropped that. I think it's cool that they brought that up, but I don't think they really picked that up. I think, to me, that's what disappointed me, was that they didn't do more than just talk about it for 1 second. Like, I would have liked to have seen them bring that, whatever that idea is, through that character. But I agree with you that in that scene, I was like really into it for maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes, even though by the end of that scene I was like, boy, I'm kind of just watching someone be terrorized. And sometimes when that goes on so long on screen, I start to wonder, why the fuck am I watching this? Like, why am I excited to watch someone just be horrified and terrorized? But that opening scene was maybe one of the more successful parts of the movie for me, just because it did feel like they were trying to ratchet up the tension, and they were trying to give us something a little bit new. And I don't know if you both were doing this, there was some really good framing of like waiting for something to walk past in the background, or just there were some big shots where she was like in front of 2 shadowy areas or whatever. That opening scene was pretty effective.
I don't know, like I the more I think about it, like there's definitely it's weird to say this, because like you mentioned, like, or we've mentioned The Force Awakens a few times talking about this, the Star Wars with episode 7, but like it's weird because that brings back these legacy characters, and they're a part of where the story is going forward. And this is kind of doing the same thing, just like the Halloween thing did, or the Halloween reboot, whatever did. But it's like, it's weird because the biggest criticism of a lot of those movies, especially of Force Awakens, even though I love that movie, is that you fall victim to doing the same story again, not beat for beat, but like the shell is like almost the same story. And that's it's a fair criticism. I think, like with The Force Awakens, I don't really totally agree with it, but I mean, I could see that being a concern here, because in a lot of ways they're kind of doing those beats in this movie. But in some ways, I feel like it's intentional. Like, I feel like that's a part of what they're saying. about the idea of a requel, which we have this whole exposition scene about, like,
right. They're commenting on other requels too,
exactly,
not just horror movies. Right.
and about how the idea is to change that story and make it something original, but by still paying attention to what kicked it all off, and in doing so, this movie that they're in, that we're watching, kind of becomes the same thing almost. I don't know. I don't know. I really liked it. I don't know, man. Like I'm probably in the bag for it more, but I have my issues with pieces of it. But and I mean, some of the criticisms I have are pretty big feelings. But I don't know if you want to maybe talk a little spoiler real quick.
Let's do that. The one thing I guess that's not really a spoiler that I'll say, this is the last kind of non-spoilery thought, is do you think the character being named Tara was a reference to is Tara home from The Strangers? Because the Scream movies are always full of like names that are references to stuff. But I really liked that, and I was thinking, like, have they ever really commented much on that movie? And I guess they haven't really. I don't know, but that one feels to me like, I mean, the home invasion aspect of that feels, there's some Ghostface-y kind of aspects to the way they get terrorized in that movie, just with someone who has control over the surroundings that you're trying to feel safe inside. But anyway,
right.
But in this one, Tara's home. I was like, did he say that on the phone? I guess no. He was asking for her
mother.
Her mother, or was it the mother or her father? The mother, right? Because he was pretending that he was like, she thought maybe it was the new boyfriend for a minute there. But yeah. So anyway, all right, that's it. So I guess we already said where we think it falls. I mean, no one's saying this movie sucked. I'm just saying it left me a little cold. And I did say before there was one thing I absolutely hated, and I guess we're about to go into spoilers, and I'll say what I absolutely hated. The ghost of Billy Loomis. I hated it. I just thought that was like so corny, and especially at the end.
Leans over like, so Scream is a ghost story now?
Yeah, when he's like, when he like gives her the thumbs up. There was a little bit of humor involved in like your dad's the murderer who was your dad coming back to like cheer you on to kill somebody. That feels kind of Dexter or something, But and like, I do think leaving at the end of the movie with this idea that maybe she's this person who could be a killer in the future, that feels like a fresh foot to put the franchise on, where it's like we might be following the killer next time or something. I don't know if they would do that, but I just didn't like when she first saw him in the mirror, I thought, is she going to see lots of characters from the past movies, and it's all because she's fantasizing about them? And I thought, oh, maybe that's a cool way to get like a cameo for Matthew Lillard and Billy Loomis, and Skeet Ulrich, I'll use his name. But I didn't know who else might come back. But then when it stuck, this is her dad, and I don't know, that just felt really corny to me. And it felt, I think we talked about this with part 3, the ghost of the mom, like that just doesn't seem to fit the world of this movie. And it's sort of suggested that it's just in her head, but they keep coming back to it. And even that ending note of him being like, "You did good, baby," I don't know, that just felt really like it just didn't fit in a Scream movie to me. So there you go. Did you hate anything?
I'm fine with that part. I'm fine with it. Like, I feel like the one in the third one with her seeing her mom was a different vibe, like actually a ghost story with the story. This one felt more like, oh, this girl's crazy and she sees her dad. Okay. So I was fine with it. Can I say what I'm not fine with?
Do it.
The motive, like, I feel like I would be elated with this movie, especially with the emotional roller coaster that I was taken on during a certain scene. Like, I need it. You're going to laugh at me. I follow this TikToker she talks about horror movies, and she had me convinced that Stu was alive and he would be one of the killers in this movie. So then I had myself convinced, and I was like locked in on this, like, Stu's alive, he's coming back, like, we've already seen Billy, all the legacy characters are back, like, I know something effed up is going to happen to a legacy character, this is going to redeem it, and this is going to be like the close of those characters, and that did not happen. So I am very, very heartbroken over it. I can't, like, I lost sleep over it that night. I text Steve the next morning, like, I can't get over this. Like, I cannot get over the fact that this child and this slightly older child were the killers, and that it wasn't Stu in some
Right.
way.
Right.
Well, there was even talk that was supposed to be there was a version of this movie where they were talking about bringing him back, or where there was some plan to potentially bring him back. By the time I think, were going forward with the script, they had weeded that idea out of it. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people sort of half expected that. There is a little Easter egg. I read about this. I didn't catch it in the movie, that Kirby survived
alive,
part 4.
yeah.
I like that. Kirby was another character that I really liked, that I was like a little bummed that, like, another character who had the potential to be that kind of Randy Meeks-ish sort of like spirit
Definitely.
of the franchise kind of character. So I was a little bummed when she died, or seemed to. So, I think that is maybe setting up, here's another legacy character they can bring back in another one. But yeah, the Matthew Lillard part of it, the Stu surviving, I don't know. I think they could have made that work. It would have felt pretty melodramatic to bring him back, quote unquote, from the dead. But I think this franchise hasn't done that yet. So in a weird way, that would be kind of like a new meta thing for them to do, would be to say, we're going to have the quote unquote undead, killer, have some way he comes back that's grounded, but still, essentially, he'd be coming back from the dead.
And they kind of like, and the whole time we were watching it, because Lauren and I saw it together, and it was like, I think they're aware of that expectation, or that possibility that people were thinking it would be Stu. I mean, because it is pretty open, and Matthew Lillard's talking about it before, like, where Scream 3, like, they were supposed to bring Stu back. Like, he was supposed to be one of the killers in Scream 3. But that was, like, I think changed when Columbine happened. But I think, the way the movie starts and kind of plants these little breadcrumbs that make you think, even there are overt choices that, like, kind of make you think that Stu could be involved in this story. And the biggest one is even that opening sequence where, like, the trivia questions are about the killers of the first Stab movie.
Right.
And, and Stu is left out of the answer, of what this girl's aware of what the most people know about Stab is that it was Billy Loomis, and she doesn't say Stu and she loses the, whatever. But I think that was a really interesting way to start that. And I mean, if it's a misdirect, I mean, I would love to hear the directors or the filmmakers talk more about that, because I know that's something that a lot of people talk about. And Lauren does send me these TikToks that she's talking about all the time. And
like
these
5
theories, and these theories are, like, interesting. And, like, I gotta admit, like, I feel like that would have been pretty amazing, for it to have been Stu, especially when you consider the fact that the fact that Dewey dies in this movie.
So I think that, like, our hashtag, instead of we misspelled Dewey did it, and we
Dewey died.
Dewey died in it. Yeah, Dewey died in it. Yeah. No, but
that one up.
But no, listening to our last episode, you talk about you had, like, a Word document that you had written laying this out.
Theory, yeah.
And I told you at the time that I sort of hated it because I liked him as a virtuous good guy, but I also thought that a part 5 kind of thing to do would be to do that. And so I think maybe I did have it in my head that they were going to do something bold like that.
Different, yeah.
I wondered, was Steve feeling his hopes die as the movie was rolling along?
Yeah.
Because not only did he does the opposite of doing it. He goes back in a very doomed fashion, like in a very like, we know this. That was another thing I thought was a drawback. Like, I would have liked his death to be more like a surprise or a fighting moment or something, but it felt like a march to the death, because you just knew, he's gonna, like, this is not going to go well for him. But the way they played it as, like, an act of heroism, and he's trying to go back and, like, learn from past mistakes, I thought that was kind of fun. But ultimately, it was a good death. Like, it was mean, and it looked painful, and it was shot reasonably well. It's hard to imagine the character that supposedly did it. I think that's supposed to be the more diminutive character, Amber, doing it, which is very strange.
Impossible. Yeah.
But, yeah.
Impossible.
Impossible.
Not by any stretch of the amount. Stu more likely survived a 90s tube TV falling on his face than that girl lifting up Dewey with a knife. I don't care how strong she is. I am a 37-year-old woman. I could not lift one of you. I couldn't. And she is half my weight, probably. Like, absolutely not.
Jack Quaid doesn't look like he could lift David Arquette either. David Arquette's he's kind of beefy, relatively. So I don't know. There's a I thought that was, like, it was given the moment it needed. We were meant to feel the pain of it and all that. So it's not like they wasted him, but I do feel like they kind of half wasted Dewey by that, not being, I don't know.
by being
Yeah.
that person. See that's what I mean. If it was Stu, I feel like that moment would have been like a legacy character taken out by another legacy character. Like that would have been okay for me.
What if as he's dying he rips off the mask and that's when we find out that it's Stu? Is like when he kills Dewey. That
I
would have
don't
been
know. I
like,
might still need to find out that it's Stu. I don't know.
I guess I just want more out of that last moment of a character like Dewey instead of just he's trying to be virtuous, because this whole movie was him kind of trying to redeem himself, and
Yeah.
I don't know why they necessarily need to make him that kind of a fuck up, but I do think him being the one who stays behind and being haunted and sort of saying he and Gail would never work out, like because of that she can't be back in Woodsboro and he has to be back there. I thought that was another way I just was like, oh, this guy's going to die, because they just explained how he and Gail, they aren't even going to have like a will they won't they thing anymore, because it's like,
Yeah,
now
that's
they
when
know.
Steve leaned over and was like, Dewey's gonna die.
Yeah.
He like leaned over
Yeah.
to me and told me. I'm gonna be
Wait.
honest too. I probably need to rewatch the scene because I was crying so hard that I didn't see a whole lot of it. Like, I mean, I saw it, but like I was
Oh.
really crying, like fully. Like, remember when Leo won the Oscar, like that, but not happy tears, like doubled over.
The opposite of that. Yeah.
Do you watch Sons of Anarchy, or did you, John?
No.
Oh, never mind. I was gonna make a comparison that was like a devastating thing.
Yeah. Don't
but
spoil it for him, Lauren.
I
Stay
won't.
away.
I will not. But
She has a tendency of doing that.
it was a very helpless moment for me in the theater watching Dewey go out like that.
Yeah, but again, you saw it coming, and you felt like, oh, okay, that's where they're going with this. But then I felt like, at least, and Gail and Sid did have stuff to do in the final moments, but the rest of the time, it really did feel like they were even lit differently. Like, it's like cut to them, and they're making little wisecracks or what, I don't know. It just didn't feel like it was that merging of the new and the old that was really gonna, like, again, it's a little bit expectation, but there was more just that there was something lacking that I didn't get. But I think, with the second viewing, I might appreciate some of the sort of setup and, like, the little hints. It's always fun to go back and watch these movies knowing who the killers are, just to see the mechanics of things. But I feel like in this movie, I already was thinking it just didn't work. And also the Jack Quaid character disappearing at the end for so long, it's almost like it's too obvious that it's him, because he goes down to get a beer and is gone for like half a day. It's like they don't explain, they don't show, you know what I mean? There's no explanation for why he wouldn't have been right back up or follow him or something. So it did feel like, okay, he's one of the killers. But I thought that the reveal that Amber was one of the killers was a pretty, like that moment where she shoots the girl was at least like a shock. I was like, oh, okay, well that's the kind of surprising thing I expect to see in this kind of movie. But then it made me think about mechanically, like, why did she choose to reveal that in this moment in front of all these people? Like, anyway, it just, I don't know that their plan really made sense to me. But I think the bigger thing is, you're right, that it doesn't seem like she could have pulled off. We said this before, though. Jill, was that the character's name?
Jill,
in part 4?
Jill Roberts. Yeah.
She didn't seem like she could have done half the stuff that she was supposed to have done in that movie.
Or her partner either.
Yeah, right. Right.
I mean,
The Culkin
either
kid.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least Emma Watson has a commanding aura about her. Like,
Emma
I don't think
Roberts.
she could. I mean,
Emma
sorry,
Roberts.
Did I say Emma Watson? Emma Roberts.
Yeah.
Yeah. She has like a commanding aura about her. Even like Scream Queens, like she just has this vibe. Like, I still don't think she can lift a man off the ground, but she definitely seems like the kind of person that might kill somebody. I don't know. The other one, Amber, she was not it.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, a lot of that doesn't work for me also, and I think that's some of the big things that stand out to me. Like, I really didn't like love. Is it Melissa Barrera, the lead who played Sam?
Right.
She was good. I mean, she's fine, but I think people around her were better, which I think is not good. But I just, man, I don't know. Dewey's death scene really messed me up, and I think also this is another example where I was talking after the movie, like another creative way that they like mislead by the trailers, because there's a call in the trailer where like Ghostface calls Sydney and says it's an honor, and that line of dialogue is not in the movie the way the trailer cuts it. That line of dialogue is, during Dewey's death, and I thought that was pretty awesome. Just not the mechanics of who probably did that and why it got to be that person to off one of my favorite horror characters of all time.
Is it a joke? Is this like a meta joke about horror movies that that nobody like there's like a series of like murders going on, and one of the victims is in the hospital, and like hospitals are left unattended with like lights off and nobody working
it's
there.
Energy savings mode. Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
but I was wondering, like, is that just the horror movie? That's what happens in hospitals in horror movies, is they're abandoned and they're just like nobody's there. And I was thinking, is that like a meta joke, or is that just one of the, like, are we meant to, you know how like in is it Springwood? Is that where the Nightmare on Elm Street movies take place?
Springfield? No.
Springfield is
I think it's Springwood. Yeah.
Springwood.
I'll check.
That like, it seems like that's a weird town where like, okay, all the adults know about this crazy thing, but they don't tell their kids or something. You know, it's like, is Woodsboro a weird town where people just sort of like, when the killings start, we kind of clear out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like
And
there's a
also
little
that
bit of a
apparently
joke
no
about
parents-
that.
No
Yeah.
parents are around either in this
Right.
whole movie, it seems like,
Yeah.
except for Officer Judy or Deputy Sheriff Judy.
Right. Oh yeah, we didn't really talk about her. I kind of forget about that whole stretch of the movie where she and her son get killed. But you know, some of the mechanics of that
I
scene,
like
I
that
thought,
scene, actually.
I
I thought
thought
that
the
was good.
suspense there was reasonably well done, because you didn't really know what was going to happen to who, and then when the scene kept going, and you keep thinking that the taser's going to come into play, but it was more like, no, it's just a few inches out of reach, and therefore it never comes into play.
Right.
So, which is kind of, you know, chilling. And his death, the way he was stabbed into the
my
neck,
God.
that was pretty
Brutal.
gruesome. Yeah.
I feel like this movie definitely showed more violence. Like all the movies have been violent, obviously, but this one, like up close and personal, showed more gore than just like blood. I
Yeah,
feel
it's
like.
it's very violent, and I mean, I don't want to sound like I like condone that, but like I like that this movie, like the way that the kills happened in terms of the pacing of them, and even just like if you think about the people that die in this movie, like the way they die is very juxtaposed, like to the point of like who is doing those killings. Like the ones that happen super fast, is that the boyfriend, or you know what I'm saying, like who is doing each, because like there's a method, it looks like, based on who is doing it. Like one of them seems to do like a slower, you know, suffer kind of thing, and the other kills are very like fast, you know, like the jab in the neck to the guy in the parking lot and just letting him bleed, you know, like it made
That got a laugh for my audience. Like my audience actually
Really?
like, that was like the biggest reaction, honestly, in the whole movie, was when that happened, because people were like, "Oh my God!" But also, kind of, you know how some people become like, it becomes a joke. Like, we don't like this character, so we don't mind the fact that he's going.
That he gets
But like, people were like, that really set. I don't know. I noticed that moment, but yeah, the quickness of that, it felt like something kind of new, and the slowness of the other injury felt like something kind of new. But
like Wes and Dewey, and you know, those kills were slow and like.
Yeah.
Very hard to watch, you know, and some of them were not. Like even when, you know, the opening scene when he starts stabbing her like 7 times, you know, like that's very fast and very like aggressive. And I'd be curious the breakdown of who did which kill. I'm sure that's out there somewhere, but
I like the daytime. I like the daytime aspect of the kill.
Oh,
with the was it
Judy.
Sheriff? Was she
Sheriff
she
Judy.
Sheriff? Yeah, Sheriff Judy. And I also thought, similar to like the vending machine room at the hospital, having Ghostface just kind of pop up. It's silly to picture Ghostface hiding behind the door waiting for that moment, but it's a well lit room. I don't know. I love when horror tries to, like, you know, break those rules and say like, okay, it can be just as scary if it's happening in a well lit environment, or it can be just as scary if it's happening during the day. So I thought those moments were good.
The Judy one was very ballsy. Like Ghostface doesn't usually do that in the sidewalk.
Like jump out. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. That was,
yeah.
And that felt, there was a brutality to that. You know, I wasn't even thinking, Steve, about breaking down who did what. I've always thought about that in relation to the mechanics of like, well, this person's here and
there,
so someone's off doing the killing. But I never thought much about the sort of like, watch how that killer does their thing as something different. But all we know for sure is that Amber had lifts when she was Ghostface.
Yeah, had to.
I mean, is that just a joke of these movies, though? Like, if we
I don't know, I
commented on,
guess.
if you talk to them,
Yeah.
would they say, yes, we've always thought that was sort of something that's just a cheat that we accept? Because they certainly don't try to make it plausible by having like, well, it could be funny if the people that were putting together, like, comparing notes about their Ghostface attacks were like, what do you mean he was tall? my Ghostface was fucking short.
Was super short, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a good point. I one other thing I wanted to mention real quick, because I don't think it really gets enough attention. I mean, maybe over the years it has, but Roger Jackson, like the voice of Ghostface, I've always loved the way that
Your close personal friend, Roger Jackson?
Yeah, close personal friend. I have a video on my phone, guys. Hey, you wish me happy birthday.
Spontaneously,
I've always
he
loved
did
like
that.
the way he messes around with the Ghostface voice, like the way, and again, playing into the idea of who's playing Ghostface at a certain time or who's doing the calling at a certain time. I just really like that opening scene, how it starts out as just like a phone call to somebody's mother, and you can kind of feel the voice kind of slowly changing over into a full on, the one that we're used to. And even some of the calls in the rest of the movie, like there's more anger, it sounds like, in this Ghostface in this movie, which he's always been
fits.
yeah, absolutely. Like, it is much more identifiable in this movie from what we just discussed about Ghostface and the kills and just the overall tone of these killers. But I don't know. I think it's iconic, obviously. But I every time I hear that voice pop up, even like the shot when they like turn on the voice, like they have the voice box like built into the mask in that one shot, it like turns on, just like such I don't know, super cool. And I think he's always up for the game. And the idea that this movie was even shot during the pandemic is crazy. And I know they shot this in Wilmington, North Carolina, but like listening to stories about him calling in from the West Coast and doing the scenes with the actors or with the directors and recording the voice in like the way they accomplished that to kind of make it sound different for each of the killers was, I don't know. I'm always super interested in that kind of stuff. And he's that voice is iconic. So I loved it. As soon as you hear it kick in the opening, you're kind of thrown off a little bit when it's just like a voice, but it's that guy's voice. It's Roger Jackson's speaking voice. You know what I mean? And then it kind of slowly falls into that iconic sound.
Well, I think it's very creepy that he does the slow build towards like the reveal to her that he's not just this normal guy.
Person
but of
calling
course,
in,
So, but we're watching it knowing that it's him. So it is an interesting, like, tension to have, where it's like, when's he going to start to show his fangs a little bit more, or when he, whichever one of them it is at that point. But
yeah.
Well, Lauren,
Ronald to come back. I don't know.
Anything else before we bring Ronald back in, Lauren? That's spoilery, or that you want to get off your chest?
No, I'm just really bitter. Just really bitter.
So Steve,
there's probably going to be another one. This movie, already made back its budget.
It's not the same.
It's not the same, but I'm just saying there's going to probably be another one. And maybe that's the goal, is that maybe he's the big end of the whole 2 trilogies. I don't know. Maybe.
Hashtag Dewey didn't die, he did it.
Dewey didn't do it, he died.
But the next movie could be hashtag Dewey didn't die, he did it.
Oh shit! No, I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Oh,
you didn't.
His guts were laying on the floor.
You didn't see him like. I saw this. I was watching really closely. He leans up and he winks and gives a thumbs up to the camera right before it cuts
go on,
away.
guys. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
well.
We'll see. I'll keep coming back for Scream movies. Obviously, there's nothing that's going to keep me from seeing one. I will hate watch them if they get that bad, but I'll still watch them. So they got me, but I am bitter. I can't get over it. I can't accept it. Oh, you know what else was good? I love Heather Matarazzo's cameo. That was great.
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to see her. I mean, I thought that was sort of a loose end from the third movie that they never really like. That she is a legacy person they can bring back, and so it was good that they did. But it did start making you think, oh, who else is going to pop back up that didn't.
Right. So why not everybody and like move over for the next? Why keep this going? Why do this to me?
What we're really saying
personal.
is. Well, it feels personal because Matthew Lillard also, when they did the Scooby-Doo movie, they got Will Forte to do the voice of Shaggy, and it's like Matthew Lillard. He keeps getting passed over.
Yeah.
But he keeps doing the circuit. Like he's at every convention for Scream. It's
Yeah.
kind of like he's always talking. Him and Skeet are like always on every podcast I subscribe to talking about Scream.
They should have been together in this one. It just I can't get
that
over
would
it.
actually, yeah, that would have been awesome. I definitely agree with you. I mean, like it would have been an interesting. It would have been interesting.
I read an article that said like it couldn't have happened because I guess they felt like if they had to reintroduce Stu, that would have taken away from other like storyline, and they felt that that would cheapen it. But like I completely feel the opposite. Like you brought this toddler in to kill Dewey, and like they could have had Stu like and had the whole legacy cast return, and
Yeah.
I'll never get over. I won't get over it.
I like the idea John mentioned earlier, like the idea of possibly that seed planted that there could be something going on with Sam, and that like maybe if the idea was that the next Scream film, we're following our final girl, but our final girl is the killer. That might be
and like she finds him, and like they're a team, like him and Billy were a team. That's the only thing that's gonna get me through this. I'm hanging on by a thread.
So where is Stu? What's Stu been up to? Before we bring Ronald back in, what do you think Stu's been doing?
I don't know, but how did he stay hidden, and how did nobody know that he wasn't dead and buried? I don't care about these things. I'm just saying.
Minor details.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that any other horror movie would bring back any other dead person. Like, let's just, go for it, Scream.
Go for it.
He's obviously been hiding, reconstructing his face, harnessing his skills. I don't know.
Or no, he's just got a TV for a head.
The best part, no, he's living in that house. There's like a secret room in a wall somewhere. Mm-hmm. He actually like survived, and he's living in his house still. People just don't know he's there, kind of like a parasite type deal, like he's there. Somebody's in on it with him, knew it was happening, and just been feeding him for 25 years.
I mean, that way they can they can comment on Parasite. I think that works.
There you go.
That works.
Let's do it.
They can't use that house again. That's another thing. They can't. If he comes back, they can't use that house again. Like they've blown it. I'm not getting over this, guys. I'm like not.
This is where she flips the laptop up, and you hear somebody crying in the background.
Every time you guys bring up some other thing, it reminds me of another thing that I cannot get over. Like I can't move past it.
Oh man, that's okay.
Wouldn't that have been so cool too? Like, isn't it great that you guys are friends with the person who lives in my house? Like, could have been amazing.
Or anyway, he even spirals out because he's basing it around like who hangs out at this house. You know what I mean? Like the plan could be that, it could be totally based on who's in the house.
Yeah.
But we got Billy
made this movie.
Well, we got Billy Loomis's. I mean, the idea that that's the connection. I think that's what they were trying to do with that. Was like, let's connect to Billy through this character, and let's connect to Stu through the house. Like, I think that was the intention.
That's it.
But it felt like Stu got short shrift. In favor of
I
Billy.
do like the reveal of the house. Like when we were seeing it, like Lauren, Aaron, like no one really picked up on it, but like immediately I was like, that's Stu's house. Like, because they're showing certain sections of it, like the white fence, the staircase, like. And, even when the character, one of the twins goes outside and walks around the side, you can just remember that geography from the first movie. And when she gets there, she sees it on the GPS, she says what it is. And then they show the wide shot of the front. Like, I like that. Like, I like how they slowly.
They definitely intentionally didn't show it from certain angles to keep it for as long. It wasn't until I think you said something with the fence, but then you saw the side of the steps on the inside, and then
the staircase.
Because they didn't show the kitchen. They didn't show a certain. I think it was when I forget her name, but the Meeks twin was watching Halloween. And did you notice she was sort of wearing the same outfit as Randy, like the same color scheme?
Yeah.
But that scene, it wasn't.
She's watching Stab.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, watching Stab, like how he was watching Halloween, and it wasn't the exact same angle, so that you couldn't tell exactly where she was, but then obviously after the reveal, you're like, oh my God, it's like she's in the house.
Well, I felt like even before it was confirmed for me that this is the house, I could tell they were trying to remind us of that section of that movie with just the framing and him, the different characters, the way they were, that it felt like, they're paying homage to that type of house and that climax of that movie. And then as it slowly dawned on me, kind of what Steve was saying, I just noticed certain parts of things. I was like, oh yeah, this actually feels like it's the same it's the house. So, you
Yeah.
know, when by the time he was saying, I'm going to get a beer in the basement, and they were looking at that angle, it's like, oh, this is very clearly, just a different era of the same layout. So yeah, I kind of agree with you, Lauren. When it's like, they can't use that again, it's a little bit of a bummer. It's like, oh well, they did the house, so
I want
you
to
don't-
stay in that Airbnb thing they have if it's real. That'd be so cool. You know what I realized too, Steve? Did you stay to the very end, John? Did you watch the end credits? There's not an end credit scene, but was there something for like, you know how they show the pictures of the cast? Was there something for Wes?
It's at the end. Didn't it say for Wes?
I think that's it.
In the party scene I loved all that too, like all the stuff referencing him and like,
No, I'm
obviously
talking about
honoring
like
him.
on the screen at the end.
I thought something was at the end of like when they showed the cast. I thought somebody posted about it. Was there
Oh,
not?
maybe.
I don't.
All right.
I don't think there was anything in the post credit.
Okay, I knew there wasn't like a scene, but I didn't know if there was any kind of little like memoriam thing. I thought we might have missed something.
I sort of waited around, and then I realized it's like Scream has never done post credit scenes. Why would they start now? With this. And then I looked it up online and I left because there's that site after the credits where you can just
or mediastinger.com.
You can cheat.
Yeah, you can cheat.
Sometimes
a guy's got to pee, and and it's like, well, I'm not.
That's a different website, John. That's a different website.
Just sometimes a guy's got to pee.
No, there's this website where it tells you.
No, I know that.
What minute marker to leave the movie to pee if you have to pee.
Yeah, right.
Seriously?
And yeah, definitely.
And you've never shared that with me that I always.
Well, no, because you go 17 times before the movie starts, so I figured you're good.
I think I've told you that when I saw the movie Lincoln, I felt so bad because I had to pee, and I finally there was a part where Lincoln was looking out the window, and I was like, well, maybe he's going to look out that window for a while, and I just ran to the bathroom, and I came back, and I'm sure it was a different scene, but Lincoln was looking out the window when I when I came back. I was like, oh, he literally stared out the window to give me a chance to pee. They should do that within movies more. Like, let a character be like, I'm just going to lay down for a nap. Did everybody get that? I'll be down for 3 minutes. All right, I'm going to set the alarm right here. And then it's a good time to go. That's actually a good idea.
I feel like I always have to try to go before the movie starts, but then it never fails that I will miss something. I didn't this time, but I will miss something.
You almost did.
Yes, I almost did. I like literally ran to the bathroom in the very beginning of the movie to hurry back. But remember when we went to see Transformers and I missed the entire highway roller skating, the biggest action sequence in the movie? I couldn't wait anymore.
Great timing.
Always. If it's anything I'm good at, it's timing and punctuality.
I sent Ronald a message to come back. I don't know. I think he may have fallen asleep.
Well, we'll talk another couple minutes and give him a chance.
I sent him a note real quick.
There he is. Yay!
Hey.
Yeah, Ronald, we were just talking about needing to pee before a movie or during a movie, and I'm sure you have needs. I was just going to say to Lauren, because I tried to do what you do, Lauren. I always try to go right before the movie, but what usually happens is, like somewhere in the early part of the trailers, I'll be like, I don't need to see this trailer again, and so I go to the bathroom, but then there's like 2 or 3 more trailers, and I'm like, I don't think I got it all. I gotta go back. I gotta go back to the bathroom, and so it's like that's
spirits.
Yeah,
we're kindred spirits. You know what it is? It's like nerves, because I know I'm going to be in a situation where I don't want to go. Same thing happens when I have to get on boats, which is rare because I don't like boats. But whenever I get on a boat, I'm like, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom while we're out at sea. Like, what am I going to do?
You're exactly right. It's like not wanting to deal with that moment in the middle of whatever you're doing where you have to go to the bathroom. You're like, if there's any way I can not have to deal with that, then I'll do it. So yes, I run back and forth like 3 times sometimes before a movie. What about you, Ronald? You got a bladder of steel, or do you have to?
I have what you just described is my whole existence. I just like
constantly going pee.
Yeah, you go before.
You're peeing right now. I think,
I'm ready. Right? Yeah, absolutely. I have like a little
catheter in,
another can that I've put down here, and
once I sit down in the theater, I do not get up.
He doesn't. It's so weird.
What do you do?
Where
do you store the pee?
Just don't pee. Well, I also take very, 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 very long pees, like think Tom Hanks League of Their Own level type stuff. So it's more it's less frequent, but a a longer experience.
I'm more Tom Hanks in The Green Mile when I'm peeing. It's like it's like a struggle, a lot of sounds.
I mean, not to do some insider ball thing, but do you talk to your penis like Tommy Lee in that show?
No, I'm not to that point yet. I'm just like, I'm more psyching myself out. Like, you don't need to go to the bathroom. You want to watch this movie. And then when I get home, I'm really sick, but it was worth it.
Your eyes are like yellow.
It'll catch up with me in a decade or so, but it'll all have been worth it. I mean, the Batman's 3 hours long, so let's see how we handle this.
No, that's
3
what happens.
hours?
See, that's what happens to me. I read that, and I instantly start being nervous.
Like,
I'm like, oh shit, I got to start going to the bathroom now to get ready for that movie.
I got to prep for March. I'm gonna go pee so much right now.
Now, when they said Endgame was like 3 hours and 33 minutes, I was like, I'm just gonna have to wear diapers, and just
that's
normalize wearing diapers.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a viable option.
It is.
Yeah, it is. It really is, and should be for all of us.
What brand do you have on right now, Ronald? I mean, why don't we promote them while we're on the podcast?
The diaper, Huggies Supreme.
Nice.
This is like the maximum moisture capture.
12 hours of protection.
12 hours, no side leakage.
Zero.
I'm pretty in there. I'm ready.
Super comfortable. I like it.
Super comfortable.
So Lauren, just hang out for a moment. We're gonna do a couple quick things, to close the podcast out. But was there anything else review-wise you guys wanted to mention before we wrap up the episode?
Hotel Transylvania. We saw that, right?
Oh yeah. We didn't get to talk about it last week. This is another one that like kind of came. It was initially theatrical, then it was bought by Amazon. It's another one of the Sony movies that got bought by Amazon. Came out on Amazon Prime last Friday. The weirdest thing about this movie for me, which like from the jump, I don't really like the movie that much at all. I like the other films enough, but I mean, I think the weirdest thing, and it stands out like a sore thumb to me, is that Adam Sandler and Kevin James do not voice the characters in this movie that they voiced in the other 3 films. Did you guys realize that, or did you know that?
I noticed it immediately.
Right.
I was like, this isn't Adam Sandler. This is like a person impersonating.
What? How does that happen? Like, I guess they're past like the 3 mark. And he's just like, I'm out.
Yeah, apparently he's getting some residual pay from the franchise itself, but they booted him after that. Apparently,
this is a $1 billion franchise. These films have $1 billion worldwide. Why would you dip out on that? I mean, he's like Mr. Netflix payday, does a cool movie every 10 years, and then has Hotel Transylvania. I don't know. It's just I don't know. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but just to mention, like, my daughter thought it was really fun and great. It was super cute. She's watched it a couple times, but I genuinely like the first 2, of these movies, and I think that it's kind of at a point now where it's just kind of running out of steam. The idea in this movie that they kind of get turned into humans and then back and forth, but which is, I guess, fun, but it just doesn't have the humor, and something is said for not having Adam Sandler and Kevin James, whether you like them or not, like they belong, I think, in this franchise, and the characters, I think, don't really feel the same to me without them.
It's also the first one not directed by Gendy Tartakovsky, which is like, if you know him, you know that the name Gendy Tartakovsky usually denotes a certain kind of like quality and like just a filmic cinematic style, like his I don't know, he's the guy behind Samurai Jack, and I believe he started out on Powerpuff Girls. Is that what or was it Dexter's Laboratory? It was one of those anyway. Very, very, very visually stylized stuff, and he did Samurai Jack, and he did those great Clone Wars animated shorts that were out around the time of the Star Wars prequels. So he's just someone who is very good with kinetic action, and these movies I've always felt like, there's something about them. They're funny. They're a little bit of a notch above some of the other kiddie fare because it seems so comedian focused. And it really seems like it's allowed to be a little bit more, sometimes more juvenile, but just a little bit less like squeaky clean family stuff. It's got a little bit of that Adam Sandler vibe. And so I don't know if there's just, maybe this is that point in the franchise where it starts diluting. I agree. This was nowhere near the fun of the other movies, but I never saw the third one, so I don't know if it fell off as well.
I mean, it's definitely a step down as it went on, but I can see like in the pandemic marketplace where like even though some of these movies that eventually come out, these I think that Sing 2 was like the first animated or family movie that hit 100 million in the whole pandemic. Just now, and you're talking about Pixar movies going directly to Disney Plus, and the movies that Disney Animation has put out haven't been able to crack the 100 million mark. And not that this would have done it, but a quality question, a marketplace question, and then they sell it to Amazon. So it makes a little sense to me. But yeah, I don't know. Just wasn't really a big fan of it. Did you guys see anything else before we get out of here? Did you want to mention, Ronald? Did you watch anything fun and exciting?
I'm watching the 2 new shows, Grand Crew and Abbott Elementary, that are on ABC.
Oh, Abbott Elementary is great.
Yeah.
Oh man, Crew.
So good.
Yeah, Grand Crew is like, if you like Friends, it's a little heightened. It's about a group of friends that drink wine, and in this setting, they talk about their lives at the time, and the characters are really dynamic and funny, and it's just good to see a sitcom that's funny. It's weird. Like there are not a lot of funny sitcoms, and then Abbott Elementary and Grand Crew come along and super funny. So that's all I'd suggest, really.
Yeah, Abbott Elementary, they did that weird thing like where it was like an episode or two came out like 2 months ago, and now it's hit its run where it's coming out on what network is it on? Is it
ABC, I believe.
ABC, and then it hits Hulu, right?
Yep.
Right. So I've watched like the first, I think, 3 or 4 episodes of it, and I think it's great.
Yeah, it's Quinta Brunson, BuzzFeed,
right?
Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you've seen her, but she's super funny, man. And I feel like I'm investing in this like future of like a Mindy Kaling or Lena Dunham or Issa Rae. Like it just feels like her empire is about to start. She was on I don't know if you listened to Seth Rogen's podcast, but she was on one of the first couple of episodes and she was on there talking about how she met Paul Rudd. The Paul Rudd story was so good. Wasn't it
that
like
story itself is like just worth the listen, but she's amazing. I mean, she's hilarious, and she's like you definitely are rooting for her. And when this show comes out, you're just like, okay, yeah, like you just said, latch on, promote, like this show is really funny.
It's so good, man.
I haven't watched anything else, man. I've the Yellow Jackets finished up. Once you guys all finish that,
I can't wait to finish that. I can't wait to see it.
But excited to talk about that maybe next time. But I think that's all we got, man. Movieschmovie.com is the website. You can hit up the YouTube channel. What is the YouTube channel address? Again, Ronald, it's Schmovie Pod, Movie Schmovie Pod,
Movie Schmovie Podcast.
Oh, podcast.
Is it podcast?
We don't even know. Just go to YouTube and try.
Let's go to YouTube. Goddamn it!
I dare you to try to find us on there.
Just promise we're there.
Just look it up. Don't be a jerk. Just look it up. Don't be a fool.
Yeah.
Let me check real quick while we're looking.
You could just go to the movieschmovie.com and just link to it from there. It's all.
Yeah, it's Movie Schmovie Podcast.
Okay.
YouTube.com/Movie Schmovie Podcast. It's long, but
it's worth it.
It's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah, I promise you.
Especially this episode since Lauren joined us for
thank you so much, Lauren.
The back half of it.
It's always so great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Lauren, again, and
thanks for allowing me to invite myself.
If you're watching the YouTube feed, you'll see that Lauren also goes by Brian.
Yeah. Also, are you wearing a themed shirt? I saw. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm wearing a themed shirt. No, I was like, what better shirt to wear of my pajama shirts, because I am in pajamas right now. So I like to sleep in a horror movie shirt. I feel like my dreams are better. I have a lot of horror shirts to sleep in.
It's like a talisman. It protects you from whatever might attack during your dreams.
Right. It doesn't always work, but you know. But, no, thanks for letting me invite myself again.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
Thanks for coming.
Anytime.
I will do it again. It will not. It'll continue.
All right, cool. So we'll be back next week. I'm not sure what we're doing next week. We have some new shows, some new movies that we've had access to. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about them, maybe talk a little more Peacemaker, maybe talk about some Yellow Jackets if we can all get that done. But we're going to talk
about the Cosby.
Yeah,
we'll talk about the Cosby doc series, and we'll probably talk about is Pam and Tommy open then
Yes.
next week?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that as well. Some newness, just a bunch of new stuff next week.
Yeah.
Again, movieschmovie.com. Find that site for us. Please subscribe to the podcast, share it, like it, review it, rate it if there's any of those options on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this. And maybe you're listening to this on Facebook, because we all share this every time it comes out, because you can listen to podcasts directly on Facebook now. And if you're doing it there, just share it or like it or repost it, whatever you can do to help get the word out. We're trying to get 5 people to listen to the podcast. So if you can help us, we would really appreciate it.
Please, no whammies.
But we'll see you guys next week. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.